You know, you just made me realize for a second, maybe it's a totally dumb realization, but nevertheless, that that's a useful way to think about the creation of consciousness is looking at a baby, so that there's a certain point at which that baby is not conscious. This sort of the baby starts from maybe I don't know, from a few cells, right? There's a certain point at which it becomes consciousness arrives. It's conscious. Of course, we can't know exactly that line, but that's a useful idea that we do create consciousness. Again, a really dumb thing for me to say, but not until now did I realize we do engineer consciousness. We get to watch the process happen. We don't know which point it happens or where it is, but we do see the birth of consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, there's a question, of course, is whether babies are conscious when they're born. And it used to be, it seems, at least some people thought they weren't, which is why they didn't give anesthetics to newborn babies when they circumcised them. And so now people think, oh, that's incredibly cruel.
Yeah.
Of course, babies feel pain. And now the dominant view is that the babies can feel pain. Actually, my partner, Claudia, works on this whole issue of whether there's consciousness in babies and of what kind. And she certainly thinks that newborn babies come into the world with some degree of consciousness. Of course, then you can just extend the question backwards to fetuses, and suddenly you're into politically controversial territory. But the question also arises in the animal kingdom. Where does consciousness start or stop? Is there a line in the animal kingdom where the first conscious organisms are? It's interesting. Over time, people are becoming more and more liberal about ascribing consciousness to animals. People used to think maybe only mammals could be conscious. Now most people seem to think, sure, fish are conscious. They can feel pain. And now we're arguing over insects. You'll find people out there who say plants have some degree of consciousness. So, who knows where it's going to end. The far end of this chain is the view that every physical system has some degree of consciousness. Philosophers call that panpsychism. I take that view.
I mean, that's a fascinating way to view reality. So if you can linger on panpsychism for a little bit, what does it mean? So it's not just plants are conscious. I mean, it's that consciousness is a fundamental fabric of reality. What does that mean to you? How are we supposed to think about that?
Well, we're used to the idea that some things in the world are fundamental, right? In physics,
like what?
Typically take things like space or time or space-time, mass, charge as fundamental properties of the universe. You don't reduce them to something simpler. You take those for granted. You've got some laws that connect them. Here is how mass and space and time evolve. Theories like relativity or quantum mechanics or some future theory that will unify them both. But everyone says you got to take some things as fundamental. And if you can't explain one thing in terms of the previous fundamental things, you have to expand. Maybe something like this happened with Maxwell. You ended up with fundamental principles of electromagnetism and took charge as fundamental because it turned out that was the best way to explain it. So I at least take seriously the possibility something like that could happen with consciousness. Take it as a fundamental property like space, time, and mass, and instead of trying to explain consciousness wholly in terms of the evolution of space, time, and mass, and so on, take it as a primitive, and then connect it to everything else by some fundamental laws. Because there's this basic problem that the physics we have now looks great for solving the easy problems of consciousness, which are all about behavior. Right. They give us a complicated structure and dynamics. They tell us how things are going to behave, what kind of observable behavior they'll produce, which is great for the problems of explaining how we walk and how we talk and so on. Those are the easy problems of consciousness. But the hard problem was this problem about subjective experience. Just doesn't look like that kind of problem about structure, dynamics, how things behave. So it's hard to see how existing physics is going to give you a full explanation of that.